So accessibility. Introduction. The City of Ottawa's commitment to accessibility. The City of Ottawa is committed to providing equal treatment to people with disabilities with respect to the use and benefits of city services, programs, goods, and facilities in a manner that respects dignity and is equitable in relation to the broader public. This commitment extends to residents, visitors, and employees with disabilities, be they visible or non-visible, and permanent or temporary. Governing authorities. The accessibility standards for municipal elections have been developed to comply with the following authorities: City of Ottawa Accessibility Policy, Accessible Formats and Communication Supports Procedure, the Human Rights Code, Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, 2005, Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation, Ontarians with Disabilities Act, Municipal Elections Act. Your duty to electors. As an election worker, it's your duty to provide high-quality service to all electors, including electors with disabilities. In particular, you must ensure that all electors have the opportunity to vote privately and independently. You're also required to provide assistance to electors with disabilities as requested. If you meet a person you believe has a disability, feel free to ask, "How may I help you?" The elector may also request your assistance directly with all or part of the voting process. For example, the elector may request that you read the names of the candidates aloud from the other side of the voting screen. The elector may also ask you to mark the ballot on their behalf. You may do so, provided they give you express permission to do so. Electors with disabilities will know if they need help and may often have suggestions on how you can provide it. Let's see. Your rights as an election worker. It's important to remember that as an election worker, you and your co-workers have the right to accommodations related to disabilities. For example, you may wish to request a large print version of this manual or request help when lifting materials in the voting place. Should you require an accommodation at any time, speak to your supervisor. So, what is a disability? About 1.85 million people in Ontario have a disability. That's 1 in 7 people. Under the AODA, the definition of disability includes the following but is not limited to: physical disabilities including mobility, dexterity, and chronic fatigue; vision disabilities including those who may be blind or partially sighted; hearing disabilities including those who may be deaf, deafened, or hard of hearing; speech or language disabilities; intellectual or developmental disabilities; learning disabilities; mental health disabilities including depression and anxiety. So disabilities come in different forms. A disability can be visible or non-visible, like wheelchairs or scooters are easy to see. Learning disabilities may not be readily apparent. They can be severe or mild, they can be ongoing or episodic. For example, some people may not have a restriction in their capacity to function as a result of their disability unless they have a seizure. Barriers to accessibility. A barrier is anything that stops or makes it difficult for people with disabilities from fully participating in all aspects of society or from accessing the service. Barriers can come in various forms, including physical, like hard-to-turn doorknobs or heavy doors. That can be barriers for people with limited upper body mobility and strength, or having steps and narrow doors that are barriers for persons who use wheelchairs or other mobility devices. Info or communications. Not providing sign language upon request, where operationally possible, for persons who use sign language to communicate, or not providing documentation and easy to understand plain language for persons with learning disabilities. Not providing documentation in large print or with easy to read non-stylized fonts for persons who are partially sighted. Messages announced solely over intercoms for people who are deaf, deafened, or hard of hearing. So, attitudes to avoid. People with disabilities are deserving of respect just like everyone else. To provide accessible customer service, avoid the following attitudes or behaviors. Condescension. Do not talk down to people with disabilities. Don't make assumptions as to what a person can or cannot understand or do. If you sense that someone may not understand you, try rephrasing questions and asking follow-up questions. Discrimination. People with disabilities have a right to the services the city provides, including the right to vote privately and independently. Cost is not a reason to discriminate against people with disabilities. Discomfort. If disabilities are unfamiliar to some people, they can make them uncomfortable. Remember, people with disabilities are people, just like people without disabilities. There's no reason to feel uncomfortable or be awkward around people with disabilities. For example, don't be afraid of using common expressions. For example, it is perfectly acceptable to say, "Do you see what I mean?" to someone who's blind or partially sighted. Or, "Let's walk over there," to someone who uses a wheelchair. There is no need to be overly concerned or too careful. Just be yourself. People may be afraid, this is fear now, fear. People may be afraid they'll say or do something wrong with people with disabilities. Don't worry, simply ask, "How may I help you?" and work with the person to provide the support required. I will continue this in another episode. Peace.